So, greetings. My name is Angus Winchester, and I'm the Global Education Director for the numerous BCB shows around the world, and I'm going to be moderating today's presentation. I'd like to welcome you all to the second pillar of BCB's ongoing engagement with and commitment to our industry during these troubled times. Every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern, we'll be bringing you some of the high-quality bar and hospitality education that the shows are renowned for, split between some of the highest-rated sessions from last year's event, also some extra sessions selected from this year's submissions. Before we start, some housekeeping. We are going to be recording today's seminar, and a link will be sent to you tomorrow. If you're having difficulty hearing us today and are listening through your computer, I guess this is the "can everyone hear me at the back" bit, please check that your speaker volume's turned up, or message us using the chat box located on the right side of your screen. Also, feel free to ask questions through that same chat box. We'll review throughout the presentation and try to pose them either as they come in and seem relevant or at the end, but feel free to ask questions. And finally, after the session, if you'd like what you've heard, then go to the BCB Brooklyn, barconventbrooklyn.com website and sign up for complimentary entry to this year's show planned for August. Now, I'm thrilled to have our next presenter here, as I, like most people in the US bar industry, am a big fan of this man, Ryan Maybee. Ryan Maybee. Proud Kansas City native, very proud Kansas City native, ex-bartender, I guess, but proprietor and owner of the renowned speakeasy Manifesto that opened in 2009 to great acclaim by both locals and visitors, based in the old Riga Hotel building. In 2013, he partnered with Andy Riga to revive J. Riga & Co., a Kansas City-based distillery that was founded in 1887, then took a 95-year hiatus due to prohibition, but is now making J. Riga blended whiskey, gin, vodka, a coffee-based Amaro, and of course, I think one of the first distilleries that I saw to make hand sanitizer. He's an avid student and patient teacher, a certified sommelier, certified specialist of wine from the Society of Wine Educators, and as far as I know, the first person to complete the Bar Master certification from the Beverage Alcohol Resource. He also co-founded the Paris to the Plains Cocktail Festival, which was a great show. His session, The Heart of the Bartender, is actually a session that didn't quite make it into this year's show, but struck a chord with several of us in the seminar selection panel, and when we had this opportunity to bring it to life, we jumped at it. He describes it as a reflective journey through the core values that really drive those of us who have naturally adapted to the abnormal lifestyle of the professional bartender and thrived in that role, while then aspiring to pursue bigger goals. So, take it away, Ryan.
Thanks, Angus. That was one hell of an introduction. My favorite part of it is saying I'm an ex-bartender, because it just kind of like contradicts my entire presentation. It's hilarious.
Drinks by you, I get that, but do we ever become ex-bartenders, or are we just resting?
Right, exactly, and that's really what I'm going to talk about. I mean, so that's perfect. Yeah, so this whole presentation, I've never given this one before, but you know, the idea behind this was to try and you know, when you reached out to me to give this, was to like share some positive insights into our industry and what really drives us, and you know, hopefully motivate and inspire some people to really tackle this current situation that we're in head on, and use our skills as bartenders to move us into the next phase, whether it's of our career or just getting back to what, you know, we've been used to doing, because I think we all know that it's going to look very different. But I think as bartenders, we have an intrinsic ability, maybe more so than a lot of other professions, to handle this adversity and come through this situation unscathed. So I'll get right into it. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on like who I am or what I do, but what I wanted to say is I am a bartender, which is kind of funny. This picture is actually about 10 years old, I'm guessing. So yeah, I'm an ex-bartender. I mean, anyone that knows me really well, or that works for me, or that has known me for a long time, knows that it's been quite some time since I've actually been a regular full-time bartender behind the stick. I mean, I still love it. I still look forward to every single opportunity that I get to get behind the bar and get back to my roots, but those days are few and far between. Pre-COVID, I was spending most of my time on the road. I was traveling a lot for Jay Rieger and company and promoting our spirits. And with that, I got a lot of opportunities to be a guest bartender, do branded happy hours, did a lot of education, a lot of seminars and educational engagements like that. But the ones that I really love doing the most would be the ones where I got to get behind the bar and make cocktails and meet people, and that's what really drove me more than anything. But I wanted to share a story that kind of got me going down this path, and it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago. So it was a few years after Manifesto started. Manifesto just turned 11, and then the Rieger we opened about a year and a half later. And I was in Brooklyn, actually. I was in New York for an industry event, and I was walking down the street in Brooklyn with Philip Duff. Those of you, probably most of you know who Philip Duff is. He's kind of a legend in our industry, and he's one of my favorite people in the industry to get into an argument with. He's an incredibly intelligent and articulate individual. He runs the education program for Tales of the Cocktail. He's now released his own spirit, Old Duff Geneva, and he's just a wonderful guy to talk to. And we were having this really, spirited, animated conversation about identity. And he said to me, you are not a bartender, and you need to just accept that. And you're an entrepreneur, you're a small business owner, but how much are you actually behind the bar these days? And he was right. The reality is, even then, I was not really getting behind that bar, the bar that often. I mean, I was still sort of overseeing the cocktail menu and all that stuff and bartending here and there, but I was no longer at that point a full-time bartender. And so we had this really interesting debate about what it means to be a bartender. And you can look at it through that lens of being like, yeah, I work 5 nights a week. I open and close, and like, yes, you are absolutely a full-time bartender. But what's the goal of most of us in this industry that really fall in love with it? Those of us that become full-time bartenders and then aspire to own our own bar or become a brand ambassador or somehow elevate our career within this industry, we don't really want to let go of a lot of those things that got us there. And I really felt like it was important to, as we educate the next generation of up-and-coming bartenders, to really embrace that title, embrace that role. And still to this day, it's the title and the identity that I'm most comfortable with, because it speaks volumes, and it's hard to really pin it down exactly what it is. But the skills and the traits that I learned as a full-time bartender are why I'm here today, and I will forever rely on them. So, I think it's a little bit more of a philosophical question, I suppose, but I also think that right now it's vital that we embrace those core values of being a full-time bartender in order to get through this situation. Beyond that, it's really, I love all bars, and I kind of made a name for myself in the craft cocktail space and that type of a bar. But I love going to all types of bars: dive bars, sports bars, neighborhood bars, nightclubs, you name it. And I think that there is a common thread that runs throughout all of those bartenders, regardless of what genre you're in and what you're focusing on. I think there's a really strong commonality that exists between all bartenders. And so that's really what I kind of want to get into today, is what makes the craft and profession of bartending so great, and how we can utilize that as we move forward. So one thing that I wanted everybody to ask themselves right now is, what do you miss the most? If you are, like most of us, like everyone right now, in a situation where you've either lost your job or it's on hiatus, and you haven't been able to do what you do for the last couple of months, what part of that do you miss the most? What is it that really deeply pains you to not be able to do right now? And I know the answer is not making drinks. I think we all know that. There's something much more to it than that. And even though that's the physical act, is making and serving cocktails, there's a lot more behind the scenes that's going on. And last week I was on a panel for Tales of the Cocktail with Laura Green, who is fantastic, by the way, and it was really about identity. The whole conversation centered around how much we identify ourselves as bartenders and what that means to us and how much we associate that profession and associate that act of bartending with who we are, to a point, to almost to a fault, right? And so right now, all of us being in this situation where we can't do that, it feels like we're losing our identity to some extent, and so we're trying to find ways to deal with that and to get through that, and it's really tough. And you're starting to see it manifest itself in certain ways online and everything, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, about how we can utilize that need to be to provide hospitality and to be a bartender in new ways that we really haven't seen before. So we're going to talk more. I've kind of written these things up, I just made this up, as far as like what I would consider the most important tenets of professional bartending. And they kind of I want to dig a little bit beneath the surface, and there's a few things in here that might seem a little bit obvious or that we always talk about, but I think there's some other core values that are vital to the success of a full-time bartender that we can then utilize during a situation like this or in the next step. The first one, provide hospitality and show empathy. I mean, that definitely sounds cliche, and we all know that, but really at the heart of it, everything that we do goes back to hospitality. All of the other things that we do, whether it's resiliency and adaptation or creativity, vision and work ethic, camaraderie, at the end of the day, everything feeds into the desire and actually the need to provide hospitality. So we'll start off by talking about that one first, and then we'll get into some of the others. So provide hospitality and show empathy. I really do believe that the best full-time professional bartenders, and when you think about a full-time professional bartender, there's probably, I'm going to guess that there are some individuals that immediately pop into your head. One of them for me would be Jeffrey Morgenthaler. I mean, we all know who that guy is, and if you know him, you love him, and you got to respect the fact that he has never really he's never removed himself from the bar. He's been a full-time bartender for 20, 25 years, and I have other friends that are here in Kansas City, and we know bartenders in other cities and states that have been doing it for even longer than that, and they still work behind the stick 4 or 5 nights a week doing it because they truly love it. And I do think that the desire and need to provide hospitality is the most vital trait for anyone that is in that position. And for me personally, I recognized this for the first time when I was first removed from the role of being a full-time bartender. And that dates back to not long after I opened Manifesto and then opened the Rieger. So as Angus said, I opened Manifesto here in Kansas City in April of 2009. So we just turned 11 years old. This is actually the first year that we were not able to have an anniversary party or birthday party to celebrate the 11-year anniversary. So looking forward to doing it bigger and better for the 12-year. But I opened that in April of 2009. Small, intimate, dark little cocktail bar. Had about 6 employees, and it really was an amazing experience. And it honestly, I opened it during the middle of the recession, and it was on a shoestring budget, but we really did something very, very special there, and it took off really fast. And about a year later, I had the opportunity to open up a full-service restaurant above it in the same building that ended up being called the Rieger. And at that point, the company went from this little intimate group of 5 or 6 bartenders working crazy hours, all coexisting in this tiny, dark little space in the basement, to a business that had over 40 full-time employees. We were serving both lunch and dinner, and it really changed the entire landscape of my business and also of my professional career and of my existence. I could no longer work behind the bar on a full-time basis and do those things. So immediately I discovered that I ended up having to transition my focus every day to kind of the mundane, redundant things that none of us are really all that cut out to do, and definitely not the fun part. You know, dealing with the bankers and the investors and the lawyers and the insurance agents and accountants and paying all the bills and doing all those really not fun, but very responsible things that you have to do in order to keep the business afloat. And it was tough. I'm not gonna lie. It was a very, very challenging transition for me, but it had to be done. My business partner was the chef, Howard Hanna, and every bit as you know, one of the most creative and passionate people when it comes to food I've ever met. And so he was really focused on making the Rieger a world-class restaurant. He had aspirations for Genius Beard, which he ended up getting multiple nominations for, and all these things. And so I really had to transition my focus to the business, which, like I said, was difficult, but, you know, ultimately ended up working. But what I didn't realize was that in that process, I had made myself extremely unhappy, and I didn't even know it until one day my business partner, Howard, he called me out on it, and he was livid. He was extremely unhappy with me, and he's like, look, man, you're miserable. You know, you're being an absolute prick. And this came as a shock to me. Like, I didn't even know. I didn't realize it. But as I listened to him and I thought about it, I was like, wow, you're right. You know, and I was trying to reconcile with myself, why is that? So how did this happen? You know, our business was very successful. It was doing very well. Manifesto was getting national accolades and awards. The Rieger was always booked every single night. It was extremely busy. We were doing great. We were killing it. And that was our dream. It was our dream come true. And I had to ask myself, why am I unhappy? How is this possible that I am unhappy? And why am I miserable? You know, this is everything that I wanted. And what I identified was that not being able to be behind the bar, not being able to take care of guests, to have that pleasant engagement, to have that positive interaction with guests was like sucking the life out of my soul. It was really, really painful. And so having recognized that, I decided that in order to try and fix this, I'm going to start treating every single person that I come in contact with every day like they're a guest at my bar. First and foremost, my employees, because I owed that to them. And so my employees became the most important thing to me immediately. And every interaction, I wanted to exude positivity, motivation, even in difficult situations, turn it into a positive. And then same thing with the teller at the bank, or the delivery drivers, or the accountants, or the lawyers, or the investors, the landlord. You know, if you own a business, you own a bar or restaurant, you know how difficult and challenging those interactions can be. And so I try to apply my desire to provide hospitality to all of them, and it worked. And not only did I feel better over time, like considerably better, but it absolutely had a positive impact on the business. It had a palpable impact on the business. The staff was happier. Everybody, there was a greater excitement and energy within the business, and we ended up becoming more profitable. And I absolutely believe that the profitability of the restaurant is connected directly to that, to having that positive outlook and taking that approach. Hospitality is not, it's not a one-way street. It's not you as a bartender having this interaction with your guest, you providing hospitality to them, and then that's the end of it. It is, as Danny Meyer explained it, it's a dialogue. It's not a monologue, you know? And so it really matters that we treat everybody like that, and not just for their benefit, but also for your own. I think it's going to make you feel better at the end of the day. So for me, being removed from doing what I love and being put in a challenging situation, I was able to overcome that by really embracing the core philosophy of hospitality and applying that to every person, every interaction within my day-to-day routine. So the next one that I identified is vision and work ethic. And a long time ago, I kind of borrowed these core values from my original business plan and employee handbook for Manifesto, and it was just work ethic, but it wasn't vision. And I originally thought it was just work ethic. It was just the desire, the need, the ability to work hard. You know, we all know that what we do is grueling. The physical demands of being a bartender will wear you down, and there have been numerous seminars, discussions, books published on this, how to take care of ourselves physically. But I think it's more than that. I think that, you know, anybody can get themselves in a mindset, if it's means to an end, to work hard, to job, keep the paycheck coming, you know, go on to the next day. But I think that what sets bartenders apart a little bit is this combination of having that work ethic instilled within you, but also having vision, and having a desire to go further. And what I mean by that, I'll use one example. So this bar here that you're looking at, that is called Pierpont's. It's a high-end fine dining restaurant in the old Union Station here in Kansas City, and it was my first bartending job. Pierpont's at Union Station opened in 1999, and I was 21 years old, and I was somehow amazingly hired on for the opening team as a bartender. And I was an apprentice bartender. I was the kid. Like every other bartender on staff there was at least 30 years old, at least 10 years older than me. And the older guy, Radar, he was 53 when we opened, and he was exactly how you would imagine, kind of a crusty old bartender, and he definitely had no time for me at first, but he ended up becoming kind of a really great mentor of mine and someone that I admired and really looked up to over the years. But within the first few months of opening this bar and opening this restaurant, there was a guy working with us. His name was Charles, and he was pretty slick. He was like a real flashy bartender, definitely a showman. Had been doing it for a long time, really loved that human interaction. And he would run up the ladder to grab a bottle, and he would slide down the ladder. And I never did this because I was scared to death of sliding down the ladder. I'm 6'3", I'm over 200 pounds, I'm pretty clumsy. I'm like, I'm gonna slide down this ladder and break my ankle. So I just never did. But we put every single bottle on the top that nobody wanted to order. So I'm sure if you look really closely, you know, you see Galliano up there, and you see some really expensive cognacs, and you know, back then green chartreuse, nobody knew what it was, or you know, nobody wanted to order that. And so the older guys, they set up the back bar with everything on the top shelf that nobody wanted, so we never had to climb to the top. And then one day, like 3 months after we opened, we were having a big buyout, a big private party for a local firm that rented out the entire restaurant. And it was wild. And somebody convinced Charles to climb to the very top shelf, which that's actually about 20 feet high, by the way. It's way up there. He climbs up there, he grabs the bottle, he slides down the ladder, and the place just erupts into total chaos. And people are throwing 20s over the bar, and I'm down at the other end of the bar, I'm getting high-fived, and just they're having a great time. They're partying. So then somebody asks me to climb up there and get something off the top shelf. So I do it. I climb all the way up there, I grab a bottle, and the whole crowd starts screaming for me to slide. They're chanting, slide, 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 and I had never done it. And I look down at Charles, and he's looking up at me, and he just kind of smiles and shrugs. I'm like, holy shit. If I don't slide down this ladder right now, I am going to get booed. And that's going to be awful. And so I took a deep breath and held on for dear life and shot down the ladder. And somehow amazing, I didn't injure myself. But then all of a sudden I had this confidence to do it again. And so I'm like, oh, it's not that hard, I can do that. And so all night long, I'm just running up and down the ladder, sliding down. We're having contests back and forth, and we made the most money I've ever made in one night. We split between the two of us. We split over $2,000. I was 21, and I'm paying my way through college. I'm like, this is amazing. And so I immediately went to my boss and I said, I have an idea. Let's create a drink that we put the ingredients on the top shelf. We'll call it like the ladder shot or something. And every time somebody orders it, we have to climb up there and mix it and slide down the ladder. And he's like, great idea. What about the guys that can't slide, like Radar, like the older guys? And he's like, well, you don't have to slide. It's just people want us to go to the top. And so amazingly, he let me do this. And it was the first cocktail that I ever created. And being 1999 and that I had no training, it was an after dinner shot consisting of equal parts of Grand Marnier, Liqueur 43, and Bailey's Irish Cream. And so we would take this little shaker, this little mini shaker, cobbler shaker, little 3-piece, up there with ice, actually mix it at the top, like set the shaker on the shelf, mix it up there, and then you could put the shaker in your pocket of your apron or hold on to it. Got really good at it, so I could like have one hand out and then slide down. And it just absolutely went crazy and became a thing. And I ended up doing that like 40, 50 times a night. There were other bars in the restaurant, private dining room bars, that I would sometimes have to work private parties. And if I was the only one there that could do the slide, the management would have to come and find me and be like, I need to go back behind the main bar. So before I knew it, I was working behind the main bar 5 nights a week, which was really, really awesome. Point is that I busted my ass to put out this extra effort to do something because I loved it and I made more money and it made people smile and happy. And it was really, this is where I learned that I love this. And this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to own my own bar. I want to own my own restaurant. I'm done. I figured it out. I literally quit school and focused on bartending full time and planning, to someday open my own place. And I ended up working there for over 5 years. I got my quartermaster sommelier certification, CSW, took over the wine program, cocktail program, the whole thing, and then eventually moved on. But going back to the point, I think that it's not just a willingness to work hard, but it's having the vision combined with that to have these ideas and to put in the work to accomplish them. So let's move on to the next one. This is kind of an easy transition into creativity, which obviously I think creativity is paramount. And aside from the fact that bartending was paying really well and I was loving my job and having a great time, creating that first drink that the library ladder shot, there was something to that I really, really enjoyed. And so I ended up eventually creating their whole cocktail menu, which at the time being 2000, at this point 2000, 2001, it was the martini craze. This was, pretty far ahead of the craft cocktail thing becoming a real thing. And so we created a menu of 100 martinis. I still have a copy of that original menu, and it's hilarious to look back at because, my God, some of those drinks were really, really bad. But it was fun. It was a creative outlet. It was a way to express myself within the realms of these drinks. And everything was served in a big, giant, straight-up martini glass, different colors. They were almost all vodka. Not all of them entirely, but most of them were vodka. And some of them were really bad. But I actually, at times have been able to find a few gems in there that I've translated into a better made craft cocktail using fresh ingredients. So that need to be creative. And I think this is something that as we get further along, we talk more about what's happening right now in our culture and in our lives. I think the creative aspect of it is something that we're really going to have to capitalize on. Not just the hospitality entity, but the creativity is vital to what we're doing right now. Another real quick thing I'm going to share about creativity, it can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. So you've got cocktails. Not every bartender really cares about creating fancy cocktails. Some of them like to do flair, which is absolutely a combination of creativity and hospitality and showmanship. I remember learning some magic tricks behind the bar when I was just starting around the same time. My buddy works at the Capitol Grill, and we would share magic tricks and do those behind the bar. People loved it. So there's this element of showmanship. But then one of the best examples is a bar in Kansas City called Harry's Bar and Tables. That if you've been to KC, you know it. It's legendary. It's been around for probably 30 years, and it's just like a worn-in old club of a beautiful bar that has a great whiskey selection, the exact perfect vibe, the greatest bartenders you'll ever come into contact with, and it's tough to get a job there because those guys have been doing it forever. The head bartender there's been there for, I think, 25 years. So they're iconic, but what they do better than anyone else, and I've never seen anyone else in the country do what they do as well as they do, is they know everyone's name. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean, I'll bring people in from out of town, friends of mine from New York or somewhere else in the country, and we'll go have a nightcap at Harry's, and it might have been a year or so since they were last there, and the bartender remembers that person's name. And you talk to anyone in KC that knows Harry's, and they will attest to this. It's amazing. And so years ago, I was fascinated by how well they did this. I thought it was like just, I don't know. I thought it was witchcraft. I'm like, how do you guys do this? And so I was picking the brain of one of the head bartenders trying to figure out like how they do it. And he's like, you know what it is? I'm not going to tell you the exact secret because everybody kind of has their own ways of doing it. But really what it boils down to is that we have set up everything else in this bar to be absolute muscle memory. The Absolute Citron is always in the Absolute Citron same space. The Tanqueray is always in the same space. You don't even have to think about it. And after working here for so long, you don't even have to think twice. We don't hardly ever change the menu. We do one thing really, really, really well, and that is take care of our guests, and remembering people's names is a big part of that. And by freeing up their mind, by having mise en place and having structure and organization, it allows them to really focus on the one thing that they took most seriously and that's what they became known for. And it's really, really amazing. And I have just a world of respect for them. It's incredible. So if you ever come to Kansas City, please go to Harry's Bar and Tables. It's really fantastic. So camaraderie, I think, it's one thing, if nothing else, like that we're all feeling right now is a longing to be with our team. There's no such thing as being a solo bartender. I mean, even if you work behind a bar by yourself every shift, you're still working with the person that set up the bar before you, and you're working with the person that's going to be taking over after you leave, or even if that's the next day. There's a strong sense of teamwork and working together. It's absolutely something that I think even the most introverted bartenders really need. And you don't end up being a bartender without that need of working with others. I mean, going to work behind your bar, with your team is like going to battle, and you've got each other's backs, you're helping each other out. It's something that we absolutely crave and desire. And it's another thing that I'm starting to see that with the current shift and change in what's happening right now, I'm starting to see that manifest itself, just like the creativity aspect of it, in different ways, whether that's online or whatever it might be. We're seeing people express their need to have connection, and we all need them. So as we're trying to figure out how to get back to where we were, this is something that is going to be, I think it's probably going to be something hopefully that we all acknowledge a little bit more, and we have a little bit more patience with everyone that we work with, and appreciate everyone's presence even a little bit more. One thing that we did here with our business to just have that ongoing connection that we need, we created a program called Netflix and Cheers. And it was the product of a conversation that I had with one of our distributors and someone that I really love in the industry. Her name is Monique Houston. She works for Winebow. She's the VP of spirits for all of Winebow. And we were talking about maybe a week into this whole crisis, like how do we stay in touch with our bartenders and the people that have been supporting us as a brand and the people that we love? And we just threw out a whole bunch of random ideas. One of them was like, would there be a way to have like a virtual movie night? Like we could all log online somehow and watch a movie. And I started like it's kind of a fun idea, you know. So I started looking around, and there wasn't any way to really facilitate it, at least not with a good level of connectivity. We could all like decide to start a movie at the same time and talk or whatever. But interestingly enough, like 2 days after we had this conversation, Netflix announces that they're starting this whole Netflix watch party thing, where you can create a watch party. You have to do it, and it's free. If you have a Netflix account, you just upload an extension to the account that allows you to have a watch party, and you invite your friends, and there you go, you're off to the races. And so like, this is perfect. So we created this concept called Netflix and Cheers, where every Wednesday night we have a movie watch party, and we pick the movie in advance, and then we pair the movie with a cocktail. So what I've been doing is picking a classic cocktail, for the most part, a cocktail that we've all known and loved, to pair with the film. And then I encourage anyone that's tuning in, like, you don't necessarily have to make this one, but based on what you've got in your house, whatever you got lying around, whatever you have access to, riff on it. And then we share it online. So we have a Facebook group where people are sharing their photos and videos. And it's been wonderful, because it's allowed for this thing, like every week we look forward to, like, oh, we're getting together with our friends right now. Even though we're not really getting together with our friends, we're getting together virtually, and we're watching the same movie, and we're drinking the same cocktails, and we're having a good time. And there's this online chat room along with the film where we can all banter during the movie. And for the most part, we end up not really watching the movie and just bantering back and forth and having a good time. But it's been great, and it's really satisfied that need to have that connection with our fellow bartenders. Yeah, Wednesday night. Oh, what happened? Okay. So the next one is resiliency and adaptation. And I wanted to share a story about this. So Manifesto, I mentioned, first bar 11 years ago. That was the original sign. The entryway actually looks different now. But I had this sign, not that one, but I had, like, further down the hallway, I had this really interesting looking, like, metal sign that just said "things change," just 2 words with no context whatsoever. And I just thought it looked really cool. And it was something that I always I would walk by 100 times a night for years, and it would just kind of get stuck in my brain that, you know, things do change, and some of these things are outside of our control. And the important thing is that we adapt to them and we deal with them, and, you know, we don't fight it unless it's worth, you know, something that we need to fight. But, you know, we react and we respond and we adapt. We adapt to these changing situations and changing scenarios. I think, you know, it would have been really naive of me to think that when I opened Manifesto in 2009, that now, 11 years later in 2020, it would be exactly the same bar that it was when it opened. Of course, it's not the same. It's evolved considerably. It's never changed as far as the concept or the philosophy or the core values. You know, it's not a concept. It's a place. But as a place and as a bar that has, you know, made it now 11 years, it's evolved, and it is just slightly different and adjusted. You know, you adjust to the times. You get new people, you know, and as those new employees come in, they add to the overall personality of the bar, as do the regulars. And, you know, things do evolve and things change. And I really enjoy that process, actually. I love the idea of planting something, an idea, a concept, and then allowing it to mature and grow, as long as you're sticking to your core and what you hoped it would be. So yeah, resiliency. I think it's absolutely necessary for bartenders to be resilient and to adapt. That's Andrew Olson, by the way. Pretty badass bartender here in Kansas City. He is our beverage director here at J. Rieger & Co., and he's showing off the hand sanitizer that we're now producing. We're now a pretty high volume hand sanitizer factory, but Andrew, being the beverage director who once was creating cocktails here at the Hey Hey Club and for our beverage program throughout the entire building, is now overseeing hand sanitizer production. You know, and what that shows is that regardless of what we're making, regardless of what we're putting out there, what we're getting into people's hands, we're taking pride in doing it, and we appreciate it. We're doing it, you know, to help people, and as well to make ourselves feel good about what we're doing. Like, we know we're doing the right thing. And Andrew's just one of 50 or 60 employees that have made this immediate transition. And I can't even begin to explain how proud I am of our team here and how they have adapted to the environment. And we have made a massive, massive shift in our business to produce, over the last 8 weeks, over 200,000 gallons of hand sanitizer. And it's being made by bartenders and servers and kitchen employees and our tour guides that are now all working on the production line. And it's been remarkable to see that, just how tough it's been. And it was hard. I don't want to sugarcoat it, and I don't want to say, you know, that making this change was easy, because it was potentially devastating for our company in the beginning. But we've been able to get through this. We've been able to make those adjustments because of everybody's effort, because of our whole team's effort. And it's really been something to see that I just, like I said, I can't even say how proud I am. It's amazing. But, you know, I think resiliency is in our DNA. We're dealing with changing environments every night as a bartender. You never know what's going to get thrown at you. And the best bartenders, they handle it with grace, and they work so well under pressure. So there's no question that, in my opinion, as everything here shifts into this very strange new world, we have the tools that we need at our disposal to adapt and to make this work. I know that we will. I don't know exactly what those answers are, and I don't know what it's going to look like exactly. I think we're slowly figuring that out. We're going to see it, but there's no question that we have the ability to do this, and it's already starting to show. I want to share some examples. I think I have a few minutes. Some examples of how some businesses and how some individuals have pivoted, and I think made some tremendous strides in getting through the situation and helping out their communities, while also saving their businesses and their livelihood. We've seen community kitchens. The Rieger has transformed into a full community kitchen, serving over 1,000 meals a day to the hungry, and it's all on a donation basis, 100%. If you want to donate money to their cause, you can donate money. If you want to go by every day and grab a meal to go, you can pay whatever you have. Or if you don't have any money at all, you're not gonna leave hungry. And there are examples of that all over the country. And this affects everybody. It affects not only bartenders and the people that are suddenly out of work, but it affects the supply chain. It affects the farmers and their livelihoods, and they're trying to figure things out just like we are right now. You know, it's everybody's just trying to figure out how they can best contribute to getting through all of this, and it shows tremendous spirit, I think, on our part for the hospitality industry as a whole. Another thing I wanted to draw some attention to, and I think this is kind of getting to where we're ultimately going with this, we've probably all seen all these examples of what we do now becoming virtual. I mean, I know I've become an expert on Zoom. I didn't know what Zoom was 2 months ago, and now I'm paying for the premium version of it. You're starting to see all these bartenders broadcast themselves from home, doing cocktail tutorials, virtual tastings. Jimmy Yeager at Jimmy's restaurant in Aspen, he's doing virtual tastings where he's actually shipping samples, shipping boxes with tiny little samples to people around the country that can then tune in and have an actual live tasting with him in a Zoom setting. Nicholas Bennett there is a really fun one. He's using a Muppet instead of just doing a dry cocktail demo. He's having fun with it, and this is on Instagram Live like once or twice a week. Laura Green, I mentioned earlier, she's really been focusing on wellness, on mental healthcare. I mean, since we're all dealing with a lot of hardships in various forms, she's really focused on that, and has been doing regular weekly seminars on the subject with guest speakers on Tales of the Cocktail. So check that out. It's very, very helpful. One thing that I want to point out about all this is that this really showcases all the things I just talked about. It showcases creativity. It showcases the need to provide hospitality. It showcases work ethic and vision. It showcases camaraderie and the need to be connected with everybody. These are actual, literal manifestations of those needs that we had as a bartender. But one thing I also want to remind everyone is that during all this, try and have fun with it. Be creative, but have fun. One thing that's been kind of troubling to me through all this is that since we're all dealing with this massive crisis, it's like we almost feel obligated to some extent to not be happy, to be like how's it going? It's awful. And I get that, and it's tough, but I think it's okay to say, you know what, I'm having a great day. And it's okay to be happy. It's okay to say, you know what, I did this. This is what I'm going to do next. This is, what I've got in mind. And so as we start to slowly reopen or figure out what the next step is, it's vital that we really adopt that mindset of being like, we got this, and I'm going to have a good time doing it, because that's what people want. The people that are tuning in, the consumers that are tuning into these things to see Nick and his Muppet and Souther and connect with Jimmy and all those guys, it's not the drinks that they miss. They can make the drinks at home. It's the connection, and it's the bartender. They miss sitting at your bar. And so, as bartenders, we kind of have that as a responsibility to be, to some level, an entertainer, a showman, and to brighten their day. So keep that in mind. If you're gonna take this step and do these types of things, have fun with it and be creative and make people smile. I think there's nothing to be, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Another thing I want to point out here, Tobin Ellis has done a really, really remarkable job of collecting and putting together all of these resources, and there are hundreds, if not thousands of them out there, and every state is different. There's the federal relief programs that we're all dealing with. There's local stuff, there's the community kitchens, there's the online wellness seminars, there's all these different things. And he has gathered everything in one centralized location on his website. It's barmagiccom/relief. Go on there, the map is interactive. You can click on your state, you can see everything that pops up there with the hyperlink that goes straight to it. There's all kinds of online resources, printed materials. If you have questions about your finances or taxes or the different aid programs out there, it's all right there, and it's really amazing. He has put a ton of work into this, and what he's done, I think, is really phenomenal and should be applauded. So if you're not aware of this already, check it out. It's a really great resource for everyone right now. Maybe the last thing I want to say is this is just a quote that means a lot to me, that we actually have plastered on our one of our placards here at the distillery in our historic exhibit. It's amazing what you can achieve when you don't care who gets the credit. Harry S. Truman said that. Harry S. Truman is a native Kansas City, and if you didn't know that, because he owned a haberdashery here in KC before he got thrust into politics and then ultimately became president. But what it always reminds me of is the need to collaborate and to work well with others and to value others' expertise over your own, and to celebrate those things and own your weaknesses. But the more we work together and the more that we don't make this a self-centered thing, the more that we welcome everyone's ideas and efforts, I think the stronger our chances are that we come out of this in a positive light. So with that, I think I'll leave it at that, and then maybe if Angus or anyone else has any questions, everyone's been really quiet. We got a few minutes.
Well, thank you for that, Ryan. That's on one hand very simple, but so much to unpack within it, and eloquently and simply put, etc. Now, sure, some questions will come in, but I've got some, of course. on a most basic level, I mean, you said you were hired young, 21 years old, everyone else 10 years above you, etc. And yet, seeing where you are now, obviously whoever hired you, saw something within you. Now you're in a position where you hire people, have done for 11 years, etc. What do you look for? How do you look for it? How do you identify it in an interview with someone? Because we know how fucked up interviews are. They're like bad first dates a lot of the time, where you ask a question and I try and figure out what you want to hear. But do you have any tricks, tips for identifying, in an interview session, interview format, to be able to, see if you can get beyond people's bag of lies resume and to identify some of these traits, things like work ethic or creativity, without saying, sell me this pen, etc.
Sure.
Any tricks for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've actually really adopted that method of hiring for the last, ever since I've been a business owner now. And I love hiring people that are young and green, that don't have experience. I've had a tremendous amount of success hiring people like that are hungry. And what I look for is one thing above all else, and that's attitude. They got to come into that interview hungry, enthusiastic, like wanting that job, and you can feel it if they do. If they want it that bad, like you can sense it. So that's the number one thing that I look for is attitude. And then if it's a young person that doesn't have a lot of experience, honestly, it's even better. Like I really look for that a lot. But beyond that, as far as tricks in the interview to try and discover those traits, ask questions, and ask questions that are open-ended, not yes or no. Don't ask questions that you get a yes or no answer, but ask leading questions that will encourage them to elaborate and just start talking. And they won't be expecting it, and they may not even know what they're going to say, but you really get, I think, a little bit of insight into their personality and what really drives them by taking that approach.
Yeah, we always talk about ask questions that don't need answers, but almost have a story that explains, why is this important to you? Tell me about when this manifested itself, etc.
Yeah, get them talking.
Yeah, definitely. So somebody said, any suggestion for industry entry points for people who are in the midst of a career changes in this pandemic? They don't necessarily have the physical stamina to endure the bartender life.
Oh man, yeah, the physical stamina is the thing. I don't know. I mean, that would be that's something to look at. I'm trying to think of some examples that I've had of employees or individuals that I know really well that don't have that. And there's some, like working the door. I've come across some door people and hosts and maitre d's that probably fit more into that role physically than getting behind the bar, but there's no reason why you don't apply all of the same values and approaches and things like that as the bartender. But I would say, get out there and just approach people, and you never know what a business might need, like what they might be looking for, and they might have something that's exactly what you have in mind. It might be a great foot in the door.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about hosts. Obviously, the place I was, I spent a lot of time with the hosts because it's like you're the first point people see.
Yeah.
But it's not a 9-hour job necessarily. It
Right.
can be a 4-hour job that we require you for, and the physical standing round of bartending and waiting and managing is.
And also, what I'll add to that right now is with the current way that online reservations and everything has shifted, and like CRM. We are now seeing levels of providing hospitality in digital forms that we've never really seen before. And I think that can apply to certain individuals as well that are probably stronger in that area.
Yeah, no, totally agree with that. And I suppose a related question, let's be honest, not all bars and restaurants are going to open, or reopen, and there's going to be a lot of people who've been in the hospitality world who their jobs perhaps don't exist again for some time. Something I've been asking other people, what other industries, what other professions do you think, hospitality people are suited towards that might exist or even, become more important moving forward?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, my idea with this going into it was to with this presentation anyway was not to sing kumbaya and say we're all in this together. Like that's the rallying cry right now. But the reality is, you're right. There's going to be a high failure rate, and it's going to have a permanent impact on the landscape of our industry. So I don't know if I have a good answer. I mean, there's some, I think there's a future in home delivery services. I think there's a future. It has to be done well, and it has to not take advantage of the business. It has to be well integrated into the root business. So I think there's something there. But I just think there's some things out there that we haven't seen yet, that we haven't discovered yet. And
yeah, no, I mean, I personally think that changing industry, because I think there's going to have to be people who are going to change industry into things like care services, because there's still that element of wanting to help people around you. And I think, be you a bartender or a server or, caring for people, elderly people, for example, that's going to be a huge growth industry in the future as people get older. A couple of other questions come in. If your USB chapter isn't active, do you have any suggestions on how to network in the industry currently?
You could start your own. I mean, you could start your own online social group for local bartenders. That's one way to do it. I'm sure there are some other group outlets. I know that here in Kansas City we do have multiple online, like Facebook groups for different like bartender groups and servers and things like that are outside of the USBG chapter. But yeah, that's probably something we'd have to look into.
Yeah, and Blair from the Good Spirits News says, what are your thoughts about reducing bar capacity to 25 to 50% of customers? Do you think that many bars will make a go of it, especially as it seems that a vaccine is months away?
I think that a lot of bars, unfortunately, don't have a choice. I think they're going to have to figure that out. I think, practically speaking, from strictly a business point of view, is that it's not sustainable, and that we already know that bars and restaurants at full capacity have very, very thin margins, and it's very expensive to run a business. And we also knew that going into this, with all of that in mind, there was inequity in the labor and the way that we took care of our employees. So I think there's some reckoning to do within the industry in that regard. Some will be able to survive going at the 25 to 50% capacity for a little while. I just don't know how long term it is. And it's going to take coordination with the landlords and the banks and investors and all that to figure out how this looks once we're past those occupancy requirements.
Indeed, and just one last question, though, if we have any more, we'll send them through to you and see if we can comment later. What are your thoughts on the viability and sustainability of to-go cocktails?
Love it. I love it. We're doing it. I didn't mention it in the presentation, but we are doing that. I'm seeing it around the country, and it's taking on different forms, and I think it's fantastic. I really want to see that succeed. And there probably will be some pushback on it legally, but it's going to be state by state, but I think it's important. I think it's needed. Right now, it's probably already, I don't know how to quantify this, but I think it's probably already saved a lot of businesses already, just over the last couple of months. So it's important.
Cool. All right. Well, Ryan, I always used to say that you can always tell a true professional bartender because it's someone you would like to get stuck in an elevator with.
I've been stuck in an elevator.
And I have to say, I'm more than happy to get stuck in an elevator with you anytime, mate. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Ryan, so much for sharing your wisdom. I hope you haven't frozen. Anyway, Ryan, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your ideas. Thank you, attendees, for attending today's webinar, The Heart of the Bartender. And just as a reminder, we'll be sending out a recording of the webinar tomorrow. If you didn't get a chance to answer your questions or ask your questions, we'll make sure to follow you up individually. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you all. And we will see you next Monday at 4 o'clock. Take care, folks.
Thanks, guys.